Welcome to another installment of Valley View, where we bring to light items of interest for the people in the Mid-Willamette Valley. Views expressed are not those necessarily of the staff or management of KWVT or Northwest Television.
We're going to be looking at both sides of this thing. Fortunately, we invited a lot of people to be on the pro side, and what happened, Ken?
Well, we actually scheduled this for almost 3 months, and on Wednesday at 4 o'clock, they decided to bail out. That included people from Salem Chamber, people from City of Salem, Dallas, and Kaiser as well. So Warren and I are going to try and take their place a little bit and talk about the data of this event. So go ahead, Warren.
All right. Well, there's some things that, as I've done a little research, and actually a fair amount of research trying to figure this all out because we found out so late about whether they were going to be here or not. So I found this draft environmental impact statement that they put out, and that took place April 20th of last year. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about what they say in 5 different statements of need, and then we can look at what the Chamber says, why they think something like this should take place. And then we've got Scott Bassett, who has been no on this end, and you and I can talk a little bit about that too. So why don't we talk about first, we have some graphics that kind of show what they've been kind of looking at a little bit, Ken. They had like 13 different options that they were looking at.
Right.
And every one of them kind of led from no change at all to taking a look at expanding the current bridges we have on Center and Marion Street, and then the other was maybe looking at some other alternative locations, which it kind of looks like they're looking at Pine Street now, is that right?
That's kind of what I got out of the documentation that I saw.
Right, and the idea would be using the Parkway as the main entry into that?
Right, and I know that was one of the plans, because there's been many plans over the years, everything Mission Street, and what I understand from the city of Kaiser is that was one of the reasons why they went with the Parkway in the first place, is to expand that into West Salem.
And there's one issue that they've been trying to deal with, and that's that park over there, and dealing with how do they get through the park, and there's a couple of plans that actually deal with the fact that they try to avoid the park if they can.
Right. As you can see on the graphic here, that's kind of real quick of what was there, the plans that were there.
All right, good. Well, when we look at this draft environmental impact statement, they're saying this is all based on available information here, but they're saying one of those is the existing river crossing facilities and local bridge system in Salem are inadequate for current and future traffic demand, resulting in a need to improve traffic operations and the study over the no-build alternative conditions that are there. So they say that's the first one that's there. The second one was based on the existing river crossing facilities and local bridge connections in Salem are inadequate for current and future users. They're talking about freight, bicycles, pedestrians, all the vehicles in that, with regard to safety conditions, resulting in a need to improve safety for the traffic for all users. The third one was the existing river crossing facilities and local bridge system in Salem are inadequate for current and future freight vehicle capacity, involving a need for improvement in the freight mobility of the area of Center Street and Marion Street bridges. Fourth one is congestion levels in the crossing facilities, unreliable public transportation service, chariots and those kinds of things, thereby necessitating an improvement in transit travel time and reliability from and to West Salem. And finally, they're saying that the existing river crossing options in Salem are inadequate to accommodate emergency response vehicles in the event of restricted access to or closure of the existing bridges because of an emergency or other kind of incident. And so they would have to use maybe that old railroad bridge that we're using for pedestrian travel now, which would slow travel down because they can't drive very fast on that bridge.
Right.
So that's some of the options that they had there in terms of looking at the statements of need. Now, the Chamber, on the other hand, has come up with some reasons, and they kind of parallel in a way, but it's looking at it from a different perspective. And one of the things the Chamber, the Salem Chamber, is saying is that there's going to be an increase in traffic, and it's inevitable. It may be decreasing now, and they're not arguing whether traffic is decreased at this point, but they're saying there's some reasons behind that. Higher gas prices, fewer people may be working even though there's increased population because of the economy, some various things like that. And they're saying by 2031, the traffic will increase to something like 7,000 vehicles on the bridge traveling, so congestion could become a very big problem. They've also said that traffic recently decreased as temporary. They're saying that Polk County and Marion County are increasing in population. There was actually a report that came out just a few days ago talking about on average between Marion and Polk County, about a 0.5% increase in population growth in the last 2 years for this area. So they're talking about gas prices, those kinds of things, as being reasons for less traffic, but that's just going to be a temporary thing. They're also saying West Salem will grow, and there's a lot of room for West Salem to expand and grow in that area, and so they're saying West Salem should be an area of growth, and that we need to ensure that levels of transportation will be adequate as time comes along. Emergency roadway, which I talked about just a few moments ago with the environmental impact area, and they're also saying that the crossings that we have right now are not earthquake resistant, that if we were to have a major earthquake, that those bridges would fall, and then we'd have no way of getting any kind of emergency help or anything else across those bridges at that time. So Ken, those are really some of the proponents' reasons for saying that we need to have a new bridge.
And I think, there are very good reasons for it. I mean, I've been commuting from Dallas to Salem for a long time. And indeed, the bridge change that we made already helped a lot. But eventually, we need to look at statistics. But again, statistics are statistics. And you have some of the best people who do statistics working for the state of Oregon talking about a budget, and it's just basically a guess at what's going to happen. But long ago, when I first moved here and we're looking for houses, I was told not to buy in West Salem because the bridges are bad.
That's the same thing I was told.
Yep. And then what ends up happening is they said, but once they replace the bridges, more people are going to move to West Salem, because more people move to West Salem, we'll be back where we are. So the point here, Warren, is to kind of talk about what they're suggesting at this point. This is really not our opinion. It's more of the statistics of what's there, what we find on their web pages is kind of how we're going to have to work for this. So.
Right. So we find ourselves in an interesting situation here, and the question is, based on the information, do we need a bridge? If we do need a bridge, what does the bridge look like? And then the next question really is, how do we pay for it? How do we handle all of that? And from what I've heard, the discussion is that there's not really a lot of federal or state dollars that can come and put this together. So this would become more of a local or, at least close-knit regional kind of a project where it would probably be Marion and Polk counties trying to work together to come up with a solution. And the things I've heard is that there could be some kind of taxes that are put together, or the possibility of a toll on one or more of the bridges is a possibility. I mean, they're still looking these things over.
Again, they're all proposals. The first proposal I heard about the tolls, though, was that they were going to probably toll the other two bridges to make people go the other. But again, that's all speculation.
Right.
But tolls they'll never go away, so that'd be part of the other issue. But one of the things that brought us to this point is that when I went downtown Salem and I asked the question, do you know about the bridge? And what I heard was, what bridge? Or it's no longer going to happen. And so what we're here to do is kind of open up the door to let people know that this discussion is going to be happening and get informed. We're opening the door for you. There is a lot of information on the web for that, and both pro and anti, but more importantly, unbiased. There's a lot of data out there coming from ODOT, not just City of Salem, but ODOT and other groups that can kind of explain what they're more proposing to do.
Right. So just so you know, again, I want to reiterate, we've asked the people that are pro-bridge to come here and be a part of this program, and for various reasons, we have nobody here, so you and I have tried to at least say a little bit about what the research has shown and some of the reasons that they're there. But let's do this, Ken. Let's bring in Scott Bassett. He is no bridge advocate here. Bring him in, get him a chance to talk a little bit about what he knows, and certainly he's more educated than you and I are. But the bottom line is that we want to get Scott in here and get a chance to talk a little bit about his position on this whole thing and what's going on with all that.
And unfortunately, again, a lot of the data that's out there is, it's already been kind of filtered already for us. So part of that problem is that I know there are other alternatives, you know there are other alternatives, and we don't know about those. But right now, we're going to have to concentrate on this because it seems like they're centering on this one particular bridge. Right. So Scott, what have you found? What did you want to, first of all, let's talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Good. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We're glad to have you on board.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming and being brave enough to talk to us today.
You bet. And when I heard that you weren't able to get folks from the other side, I thought, well, maybe they've kind of changed their opinion and they don't see a need for the third bridge since we've been so persuasive with our information.
I don't think so, Scott.
That's not exactly what we heard, but we, we'd like to have an answer to why they weren't here. But
Sure.
the bottom line is, Scott, you're here, and we want to be able to take a little time and learn a little bit about who you are, what you're about. And I think the first thing would be, Scott, just tell us a little bit about who you are. What do you do?
Yeah. I work at ODOT, but my views are purely my own views. I'm a property owner in Polk County, that I have property within a half mile of the proposed bridge. But like anybody who owns property in Polk County and owns property in Marion County, this is an issue, and we all have an interest in it. So this project has been going on since 2006, and I became involved in it about a year ago. It has just been dragging on for so long.
Yeah.
And it was initially a 2-year project going to cost $2 million. And after the third year, they decided, well, we don't know how to pay for it, but let's go ahead and continue to plan it. And if it had been obvious that there was a good location and a reasonable way to pay for it, that would have been apparent in 2009 when this project was supposed to be done. So what we have is that we have bridge traffic has actually been pretty level over the last 11 years. It went up about 5% to 2006 when this project began, and then it's dropped off about 5% since then. And we're 7 years into this effort. If maybe this drags out for another 7 years, it will be back to the level it was of traffic when this thing started in 2006.
The proponents are obviously saying that this is an anomaly, that there are gas prices and different things happening. They've said that West Salem is really primed to grow. There's lots of property out there for various kinds of developments, and that they're seeing that by 2031 we may actually have a bigger problem than now. And then what do we do when the bridge actually costs more money? So Scott, can you give me your answer to that?
Sure. Yeah, when we're looking out so many years, when the argument is that we might need this bridge in 2031, but we don't know how to pay for it, but we want to have a bridge location on the record, so in case we get some money, that we'll be able to fund it, that is pretty risky. The cost of the recommended alternative, the tentatively recommended alternative that is put forward by the oversight team is $687 million. And in order to raise that amount of money, the advocates have identified that there are kind of 4 options for how you'd raise that much money. You'd have a 70-cent toll each way on all bridges. You'd have a local gas tax of 12 cents per gallon, or you'd have a vehicle registration fee increase of $50, or you'd have a property tax increase for Marion and Polk County. Everybody who lives in Marion and Polk County and owns property would be $1 per thousand.
That's what's proposed right now.
In order to fund the most expensive option that is on the table now, which would leave from Pine Street, it would be an elevated road that would leave the surface at Pine Street. It would go into the floodplain, and the last lane would not come down until 2.7 miles, the second West Salem exit. And so it takes 215 bridge supports in order to be able to keep that highway elevated. The City Council has started to talk about lowering portions of that roadway to the ground level, but the reality is you have to expand the footprint by about twice when you land it on the ground. So just like at Wallace Road now, next year they're going to be expanding the intersection of Wallace Road and Glen Creek from 5 lanes to 9 lanes. There's going to be 9 lanes wide at Glen Creek when you're going to the north. That's an indication of when you don't have an overpass, when you don't have traffic above ground, that you double your width. So
Scott, how do we deal with one of the things that the draft environmental impact statement talked about, and that is, and to me, it's something that we really need to pay attention to. And that is, with the Marion and Center Street Bridge, all traffic is driven through downtown. I mean, it all comes into one area. And so if you're really going over to Polk County, whether you're coming off of I-5 or whatever direction you're coming from, that's just pure congestion. And the whole concept of even expanding the bridges, which is another option they've had out there, Now you're driving everything downtown into one location. I mean, that doesn't seem, at least to me, like a viable solution either to this.
Well, the study, and it's a very detailed study, and the technical reports are about equal to the size of the published reports. But the study says that the impacts are pretty significant, and you'd have to ask, are the benefits worth it? 50 businesses would be displaced that have 500 employees.
Through widening the bridges.
Through the proposed alternative.
Right.
Which alternative are you talking about?
Alternative 4D, which is the elevated Pine Street, and that would connect with an expressway all the way out to Highway 22. And those businesses pay $75 million in sales taxes, or they have $75 million worth of sales. Of course, we don't have a sales tax.
Yeah.
But the property taxes, $270,000 worth of property taxes, would be potentially at risk. But the biggest risk is really downtown. You know, the old saying about nobody goes there anymore, it's too busy. Mm-hmm. We kind of hear that from some people saying it's too congested down there. We need to reduce traffic downtown. Well, the studies say that if you make a better connection between West Salem and North Salem, mm-hmm. you run the risk of changing the path of growth and changing future development. You know, Lancaster Mall did not kill downtown. Kaiser Station did not kill downtown. If you bypass downtown, you might kill downtown. And the report, the technical report actually says changing the accessibility could change the relative importance of downtown area to the region and could alter the pace and location of future development. That may be too great of a risk for Salem to try to find a way to pay for it.
Again, Scott, who's that report from?
Yes, so this is from the Salem River Crossing report, and it's a technical committee, and I was quoting directly from the technical report.
All right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you hear about a lot of communities where a freeway is being proposed to go by, and where there wasn't one before, and the road went through downtown, and now here comes this road going around. You hear that same argument over and over again from communities who are afraid they're going to lose that traffic, and then business will disappear, their whole town might just disappear. So you're saying the merchants downtown should be concerned as well?
I think so.
Yeah.
And another section of the technical report says that, you know, what's the impact if you just let traffic continue to be more challenging? And there's some options so that it does not have to continue to become more congested, and maybe we can talk about that.
Sure.
But what happens in the study is they said that if you don't change anything and you just allow congestion levels to increase, what's the impact of that? And that was part of the study, was to say if you don't make any changes. And they concluded that you would have increased congestion levels, you would spread the peak hour, because this is really not about bridge capacity, it's about the peak hour traffic. You don't have a problem with that bridge for 21 or 22 hours. It's just the peak hours. You know, there's 6,000 people or so that live in West Salem and work within 10 miles on the other side of the river, and they all want to be home for dinner about 5:15.
All right, Scott, just real quick, and then I want to talk about your solutions, what you're proposing. But the two other things they talked about was emergency service, roads getting through, and the other was the earthquake-resistant crossing, doing something to bridges to make sure that something wouldn't happen to them.
Yeah, and that's a really good issue, because earthquakes bring this issue home. You have two bridges there now that will withstand an earthquake, but they may not be usable. And it would cost about 10% of the new bridge cost to make them so they would be functional after an earthquake. So that's according to the state's bridge engineer. He has estimated that you can retrofit those bridges to withstand an earthquake. Because if you build a new bridge a mile north of downtown and you don't take care of those two bridges, if there is widespread damage along the coast and through the valley, it could be years until you end up fixing those two downtown bridges. Why would we put all of our economic resources into a new bridge and then not take care of what we have already?
All right. So, Scott, tell me, what kind of proposals do you have? Obviously, there needs to be some things done, and it sounds to me like one of those is kind of retrofitting those bridges so they could handle the earthquakes.
Yeah. So there were studies completed in the late 1990s. One of them is called a Bridge Head Engineering Study. Another one is called Wallace Road Access and Circulation Study. And basically what they did is they had an engineering team and a citizens group, and they said, what are all the options we we have to get the most out of our existing investments. And, you know, it's important to acknowledge that a number of projects have been done, but right now you still have a stoplight at Center Street exit to northbound Front Street. One of those recommendations in the report was to make it 3 lanes north, so that when you come off of the Center Street Bridge and you want to go to elsewhere downtown or you want to go north to Portland, you would have a dedicated turn lane instead of a stoplight. And then you would have 3 lanes wide all the way until you get past that next intersection a block and a half away. That would make a big difference in the mornings and in the afternoons. On the west side, one of the options in the Bridgehead engineering study was to have a parallel street to Wallace Road and get some of that traffic off of there. But the reality is next summer, when that Wallace Road and Glen Creek intersection are improved, that is going to reduce the amount of backup that comes onto the bridge for people getting home in the evenings. So those are just a couple of examples. I could list more if we had more time.
Well, that's all right. So Scott, given cost, is there an estimate as what that might cost us compared to what we're talking about in terms of bridges?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So specifically in the work of the committee, they looked at, first they thought that getting a off-ramp dedicated from Center Street Bridge going to Front Street North would cost about $5 million. Then they looked at it and they said, oh, they need to rebuild some of the bridge next to it in order to get past. Right. And then they said it might be $20 million. And there are options that should be, you know, seriously considered. But for tens of millions of dollars, they can get the existing 8 lanes worth of bridge crossing capability so that it is working at a higher capacity. The specific studies said, you know, right now the bridge slows down at about just about 4,000 cars per hour for peak hours, and it gets up to 4,700 for about an hour a day. But the Bridgehead engineering studies identified how you can get up to 6,000 cars per hour without having to build a new bridge. So that buys us at least a decade so we can figure out. Because, you know, we've talked about a Mission Street bridge in the past. We've talked about a bridge at Lock Haven through Kaiser. We've talked about Pine Street before, and the conclusion on Pine Street before is that it was too expensive, even when there was 90% federal money was common. For us to anticipate what is the best option in 2031 now, when it's changed around, is just too premature.
All right, so we've talked about West Salem, the traffic with Wallace Road and the expansion there. One of the things that the draft environmental impact statement talks about are some of the intersections coming off of Marion and you know, going on and off of the Marion and Center Street bridges downtown and the issues there. How do you see addressing those kinds of problems?
Yes, yeah, you have stoplights in locations where you really should have free-flowing lanes. And you know, when you go back and you look at the history of it, even in the 40s, they had recommended an overpass of Commercial Street leading onto the bridge, so you could have a dedicated traffic pattern that would get you from downtown, the Salem Hospital and the State Capitol offices, and they wouldn't have to stop to get on the bridge. So basically, if you had Marion Street Bridge, which goes west, if you had the 2 right lanes be dedicated to local traffic, meaning they get off at Wallace Road, and the left 2 lanes are to through traffic, then you don't have the people weaving coming on from Front Street, then crossing 2 lanes of traffic to try to get off at Wallace Road.
That's pretty crazy in a way.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like to me, though, again, I'm not an engineer and I don't play one on television. The problem seems to be exactly what you're saying, though. It's the peak hours. It's not really trying to route the traffic from I-5 to the coast. Because if that was the case, then at 6 o'clock we'd have the same problem. It's really those peak hours. And even if, again, I'm going to ask the question, you may not know the answer, but if we drop all the traffic onto Front Street with 2 lanes, then doesn't Front Street back up going north when it hits that next stoplight?
Yeah. And I think with congestion and with the bridge traffic, it's an emotional issue. You know, if you got stuck in traffic on Friday, and it's like, okay, I was delayed again. It's like, do whatever it takes to get that taken care of. But when you're talking about 3 minutes for the average commute, and you say the cost is $687 million, it just becomes, what is your threshold for pain? If you can get somebody else to pay for fixing that bridge, that's great. We don't have much in the way of state resources. We don't have much in the way of federal resources. Even if we are successful, or advocates of the bridge are successful enough to get a 77% funding ratio of local money, that's still $500,000 that we need to come up with locally. And before, when I was talking about the 4 different options to look at raising revenue,
Right.
you'd need one of them for a local bridge, meaning you don't have the expressway connection out to 22. If you have the full build bridge, you actually need 2 of them. You need $1.40 for the toll, or you need $2 for the property tax for everybody in Marion and Polk County.
I don't know how the public would take a toll. I think most people, if we were to open things up and have a phone line and get phone calls here today, we'd probably be getting tons of people saying no toll, because we're not used to anything like that. We hardly ever see it up here.
Well, the thing is that I'll be real honest, is every time I make that comment, and it's to the public, not to, and I say there may be a possibility of a toll on one or all the bridges. It goes from, I'm not really concerned, to, what? So we do understand that. And, but again, if I liked your analogy saying that, what's your threshold for pain? You know, is it bad enough? I mean, I know people, what they did is they moved their work schedule. Instead of coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning, they come in at 8:30. There are other alternatives that are possible, but we really wanted to find out from you, if we can get kind of a closing statement, what would you like to leave with these people?
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity to say that. So basically the question, when you're talking about a third bridge, do we need a third bridge? I would say it's a very simple answer. We don't need it because traffic on the existing bridges is trending down, not up. We can't afford it because we don't want tolls, gas tax increases, or property tax increases, and there are better things we need to spend our money on now. Polk County doesn't have 24-hour police coverage, and they've had to reduce their corrections. And we really don't want it because of the harm that it does to downtown, and we didn't even talk about the impact on the residences and businesses in West Salem and North Salem. We can fix the congestion problems we have. We can fix the ends of the bridges to have traffic flow freely and improve our bike routes and our transit system. And we can delay the discussions about a third bridge until later when it's more an obvious problem and more of an obvious solution.
Well, Scott, I got to say, you've brought up a lot of things to think about as we look at this. Don't you agree, Ken?
I agree, and I that's part of the reason we're doing this, is to get the information out. And it's not for us to make a decision in any way, shape, or form. It's just that we want to get the information out there to the people to understand. And when it does come time for a vote, or at some point, that they at least are more informed on what the other options are. Being a citizen of the area, speaking only as a citizen, now not part of the station, is that I'd like to see all the alternatives. I'd like to know what they are, and because, again, I've been through this for a long time, thinking that the traffic problem is from I-5. Well, it really isn't. The problem is, again, the peak hours, and the statistics point that out very nicely. So.
All right. Well, you know, it would have been nice to have the pro people here to talk about their side, but Scott, I think you carried your side very well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much, Scott. Thank you for being here with us.
And also, Warren, the other thing is that we really wanted 3 sides here, and that's what the original intent was. The original intent was to have those, just really have the mayor of Salem and data brought out. And then what happened is that they really wanted to have somebody to talk about the subject a little more, rather than, so it had a little more carriage. They wanted to bring the pro people, so we had to bring the anti people. But the point being here is we really just want to get the data out. At some future date, maybe whenever they get a little more concrete of what they want to do, we may bring another show back here to talk about the data itself, the hard data, if it's 1 or 2 plans, and I think that's something we may need to do.
Yeah, my fear is that this thing's just going to go on forever.
It has gone on forever.
Well, 1968 was when we really got back to starting to see maybe the first conversation about it all.
Right. And the other thing is, I'm going to kind of sum this up very quickly, is that this show, Valley View, is our first attempt, again, to bring back the Willamette Valley information of what's going to be happening. So I appreciate the time, Warren, and thank you, and I wanted to thank Scott again for being here, and if there's anything else they need to know, it's on the web and it's available to them. So
yeah, if you just do a search on Third Bridge, Willamette River, or Third Bridge Salem, you'll find all kinds of information, no question about it, about what's going on with the bridge situation, and I encourage you to get involved, find out more.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Warren. I appreciate it.
Bet.